Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, where longtime strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt explores everything from the art of coaching, improving performance, sports nutrition, and mental training. Now, welcome your host, Coach Tommy Moffitt.
Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast. If you're listening for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends. Before we get to today's guest, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the Moffitt Method training program and what we have to offer. At the Moffitt Method, we offer a remote coaching solution for your school, your sport organization, or any teams. If you are interested or know of someone who may be interested, please contact us from our website, themoffittmethod.fit, or you can email us at info@themoffittmethod.fit for more information. Our very special guest today is Coach David Queck from Jones County Junior College in Ellisville, Mississippi. Coach Queck is finishing his sixth season as the Director of Strength and Conditioning at Jones. His oversight in football, men's and women's basketball, and softball has seen over 180 D1 signees and the highest winning percentage combined in those three sports in the nation. By way of St. Cloud State University, Coach Queck was a two-sport athlete in football and track and field. He continued competing in track and field while a GA at the University of Southern Mississippi. While at Southern Mississippi, he helped the sprinters and jumpers win 3 NCAA individual titles and finish within the top 10 of the NCAA. Coach Queck then left for the University of Memphis as the short sprints, jumps, and multi-event coach, where he coached 11 All-Americans, 2 USA Championship participants, and 3 Olympians. Coach Queck is a hobby powerlifter totaling 1,565 at a body weight of 175 pounds and boasts a 680-pound deadlift. What's up, Coach?
How we doing, Coach?
I'm doing great, man. Welcome to the podcast. I'm excited about having you here today.
Man, this is awesome. I can't believe it's taken this long for you to get me on here, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, in my original list, you were on it. And my original list has got about 70 names on it, but I wanted to get a junior college coach's perspective of strength and conditioning. And you were the first person that I thought of. So I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I don't think there's a lot of names to choose from. Fortunately or unfortunately, but
yeah,
man, I'm glad I made the cut.
Good deal. Well, so let's get started. So how did you get involved in strength and conditioning, and what was the path that led you to Jones County?
Yeah, well, it all started when I was an undergrad. I played football and ran track at St. Cloud State. From there, I knew I never wanted to work a corporate 9-to-5 ever, and B, I just wanted to be outside. Since half my life I was stuck inside being in Minnesota, so I was actually a GA for the track team at Southern Miss. So I finished my last exam at St. Cloud State, and I drove 18 hours down to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. When I was done there, I was an assistant coach at the University of Memphis. And so I was brought there to coach the multis and the jumps, and I ended up being the short sprints coach along with the director of strength and conditioning for the track team. And then, the recruiting part was what really brought me to, or not wanting to recruit, really brought me to the strength and conditioning side. So for football, for example, your coaches will have a territory, an area, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like, I'm recruiting South Mississippi, West Alabama, something like that. Well, track, your recruiting area is planet Earth. And so so I'm sitting there on the phone with these girls, a girl from Croatia at 3 a.m, or some guy in New Zealand at some obscure time of the day, or, calling Norway, Finland, Hungary at odd hours, odd days of the year. And I'm like, man, this just that's not for me. And I really wanted to just get into something that was the nuts and bolts of what I was doing. I wanted to coach. I didn't want to do all that. Let someone else bring me the horses and let me train them. And so just by happenstance, the job at Jones College came open, and the rest is history. It was honestly, it was truly God's plan for me to be in that spot at that time. And it's awesome.
Yeah, so Jones is just north of Hattiesburg. So you must have liked your time at Southern Miss in the area. So there had to be a draw that brought you back down here besides just Jones.
There's two of them. Number one, I love the area, like you said. It really felt like home when I was here. But number two, I met my wife in Memphis. And she's from Oak Grove, which is just west of Hattiesburg. People call it just basically Hattiesburg. And she wanted to get close to home. And so she got a job close to my work. And so it was literally the stars aligned. We both had jobs here, and we've been here since 2018.
Yeah. Small planet, man. When you narrow it down like that, it's more than just a coincidence that it happened.
No doubt.
That way. That's cool. And, I've been to Jones. My oldest son, Clay, they played a regional baseball tournament there at the school. And I kind of like the area myself, because I'm a country boy by heart. And so we were there for, I guess we were probably there 4 or 5 days because we had some rain till the tournament, until we got beat. We got knocked out of the tournament. But I really liked it there myself.
Yeah, it's a great area. I mean, if people, when I talk to people around the country or introduce myself, whatever, and really the claim to fame probably is the movie The Free State of Jones with Matthew McConaughey, to give you a real sense of like where it was its own independent country for like 2 days. But it's a really cool area. But yeah, if you like country, you're in the right place.
Yeah. So what are some of the unique challenges that you face at a junior college and being the strength coach?
So I think in terms of the whole job is a challenge, because number one, the biggest challenge is just lack of funding, lack of facilities. I've said this before. We have the worst facility that I've ever seen. I mean, it's bad. I would rather train the 115, 120 athletes that I have in my garage, because I have better access to what I have. So I really have to be creative with what I do, the flow of it. Look, if it rains real hard, I can't use 20% of the weight room because that part floods. And so we have barbells, we have bumper plates, and we almost have a full set of dumbbells going up to 100. Two pairs grew legs and walked away at some point in time. So in terms of programming, like I really have to. I live outside the box. I can bear the box is on the horizon. That's how far back I am. The second biggest challenge is our training calendar. So you being in Division I forever, like the training opportunities that you are able to have are probably double, if not triple, what we're able to have. So our calendar is, we come in July. So the freshmen and the returners will report in July, the second week, and we roll 3 days a week, lifting through the end of July. Then we get a week off, and then we're preseason / in season for the most part. And then we just go 2 days. So from July until the end of the season, we have about 38 to 39 training sessions in that span of time. In the spring is fun because it's from where I was coaching track to this, like spring football, like y'all have all these, like your window for that time can essentially go from January all the way through the summer, going through the in-season portion. Well, for me, what our goal is in the spring is we train for our combine, because that's when 4-year coaches come in, they see the tape, they have their list of guys they want to look at, and they need quantifiable data on these guys. Yeah. And so I get to train them like I'm basically preparing these kids for an outdoor championship. So it's a little bit different in the sense that I'm not doing mat drills. I'm not, doing tons and tons of training volumes, because frankly, I don't care about that at this point. My job to get these guys is I want them to be as fast as possible and as explosive as possible, and to be able to change direction. So we do a traditional NFL combine, and that's what we prepare them for. So that isn't necessarily a challenge. It's just the timing and the amount of time that I have to do that. So I have about 13 weeks before we start our spring ball. So I have about 52 sessions to get them as fast and strong or as explosive as possible in 13 weeks. And so those are the two biggest challenges that I have. And that those two things dictate every single thing that I do.
So you'll have a guy, if he's a full qualifier, he could come there in July, and then he could theoretically be gone in December, correct?
Right. So there's no such thing as long-term athlete development, because in December, half the team leaves. And so I'm training a shell of the team until the full team, the incoming freshmen, report in July. So for us, we run it as close to a Division I program as possible. So we have 99% graduation rate in 3 semesters, because all of our guys go play, except for the 1% who, either decide to work offshore, or whatever the circumstances may be. Maybe they're just not good enough to go play somewhere, and that's thankfully for us, that's 1% of our guys. But yeah, it's not uncommon that we have guys that will blow up their first year and then get out. The COVID year was probably the biggest year where we had a lot of qualifiers come in and then leave. So we had, I think, 5 or 6 that year that were here for just one semester. But otherwise, they're here for a reason. So they're here primarily because they are academically non-qualifiers. They're a 4-year transfer, which is a very small portion, or they just didn't get the offer they wanted out of high school. And so that is actually a majority of our guys. So for example, some smaller Division I school this kid has this offer. This kid's like, hey man, I'm betting on myself. I know I can play at a bigger school, maybe Power 5. And they roll the dice on themselves, and more times than not, it works, which is really cool. And we do a good job of recruiting our guys to stay, because we see what they can do. And also just from a physical standpoint, as good as anybody that coaches, the tape can look a certain way, but when they walk in and see you, the eyeball test is worth a lot. And that's one thing that I've really come to realize. Feel like, look, this guy looks the part. His tape's pretty good. Let's look at his measurables. Let's look at his numbers, and then we'll decide on an offer. And so those are the reasons why they come. But it's not quite a microwave process. But I'm not smoking a brisket for 35 hours either. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, how, with that scenario and guys not being there very long, how do you develop your weight room culture and ownership in the program? Are the guys really motivated to train, or is that something that they feel like they just got to do?
So the thing that I came to realize coaching here is the biggest X factor for me is teaching these guys how to train. And because training to me is an art form. It's a practice. I'm certifiably crazy when it comes to training. I'm not afraid to do something that I know could seriously hurt me. It's just, and being a track athlete, like it comes from running track. I was a 400-meter runner. You have to be certifiably on the spectrum of insanity to train for that and to compete in that, because it is, what's going to happen. It's like there's a rusty nail on the floor. I got to step on it to get to my next step, and you just do that day in, day out. But there was a time where it really hit me right in the face, and I really think the culture took a vertical line to the moon in terms of what our weight room sessions look like. And it was the kids, my first COVID group, and I had my spring semester all lined up, and it was the greatest program ever written, Coach, I promise you. And it was about 2 days before, and it just hit me. I was looking back at the numbers from the first semester, and everything went exactly according to plan. I thought it was a great July through the first semester, and I'm like, something is just missing. I'm like, these guys, they're close, but they don't get it. And so the first day where the freshmen came back, the only workout, the whole thing that we did, the whole training session was a squat, and we did 3 sets of 5. That was the whole thing. And I said, look, fellas, I was like, the thing that these are going to be the 15 hardest reps you've ever done. They're going to be perfect, as close to perfect as possible. And that's all we're going to do. We're going to build up to a heavy set, and which I normally wouldn't do, but I want these guys to strain with perfect form. And I'm telling you, it was the most insane weight room session I've ever had, that I've ever been a part of. These guys, I mean, my gosh, we blew the doors off the weight room. And I was like, okay, we're making progress. I did the same thing the next day with bench press. I did the same thing coming Thursday with cleans. I lowered the volume a little bit. Came back on Friday, did the same thing with deadlift. And from there on, it was, this is what I want. When I talk about it, the intent behind a movement, this is what I'm talking about. This is what it should be like, because we don't have a lot of time. But if I can get you to learn how to train and to understand the intent behind what we're doing, we don't have to do a whole heck of a lot. Because if you do a hard 3 sets of 5, I mean, how much gas do you have left in the tank? Yeah. And so, and the return on investment on that is going to be much greater than just doing a bunch of fluff that's going to be easy. And so that mental portion was really kind of the turning point for the culture in the weight room. And so, and it's a big responsibility in my eyes to make sure that I really develop every new class that comes in, because here these kids are. I mean, this COVID group, like I said, they missed their senior year of high school. They missed half their junior year of high school, and they're freshmen and sophomore in Mississippi. I mean, they probably didn't even step foot in a weight room. So they really never had any exposure to just any sort of strength and conditioning, anything. And so I really had to inundate them with, like, this is how things are. This is what things are going to look like at the next level. And I want you to be prepared for that next level. But it was awesome. And so now it's kind of like Harlow's theory, where here are these crazy fools coming in July, my returners, and these wide-eyed freshmen are coming in. They're like, oh my gosh, this is what a squat session looks like.
So you've kept the volume since then. You've made a point to keeping the volume low and only focusing on a few things.
So the evolution from that, once I kind of got the attitude and the intent behind our main movements, they have to have these supplemental lifts because these kids, number one, are insanely malnourished. And so like, this is really the first time in their life that these kids have had guaranteed 3 meals a day. And this is the majority of these kids. And so, the other movements that I do, and just lack of equipment, it's a very, very unilateral focus. And just general prep, hypertrophy for posterior, because these kids, they're weak in all the wrong areas. And so it's, weak glutes, weak back. I mean, basically the posterior side of their body is insanely weak. And so if you don't have a strong back, you're not going to have a strong anything else. And so I really hammer that home with these guys.
So the majority of the players are from the state of Mississippi, and how many out-of-state kids do you have?
So up until this year, our roster size is similar to an NFL roster. So we scholarship 55 guys, I believe. And we can have walk-ons, I think like 5 walk-ons. And so, but this year we went from out of state, we went from 5 to 15. And so basically I think it was just to level the playing field with schools everywhere else in the country. So because in Kansas you can have 300 guys on scholarship from all across the world. It doesn't matter. And so we're dealing with 95% in-state kids, which is insane because this state is, I mean, as you know, this state is just loaded with talent. And a lot of that talent doesn't even make it out of high school, which is crazy.
Yeah. So you've touched a little bit on the training schedule, how you organize it and everything. But what does a day look like? Because I know you're doing more than just football. So what does a day look like for you in the fall?
So I work with football, men's and women's basketball and softball. And when I started, I was the only certified strength coach in the state, and probably I would be willing to bet I was probably the only certified strength coach in junior college in the country. I don't think there's many, if at all. So the sport coaches here are insanely flexible with me. So I get to make my schedule, which is great. And so, depending on when the practice schedule is, class schedule, my weeks typically change almost on a weekly basis because we don't have an indoor facility. So if it rains here, things get moved around. But I'll be doing basketball, and softball off season 3 days during the fall semester, and then football will be 2 days. And the biggest switch that I made, and because the awesome part about this, we play on Thursdays. So we're not playing on Saturdays. Really? So weekends we're free. But what I absolutely hated, and you can check me on this if I'm wrong, but I think it may have been you that was fairly anti lift after game day. Is that true, or am I making that up?
I never liked it. Now, I've only done it one place, and that was at Miami. And our closest, we played Florida State. All right. So that was our closest away game, but that was only every other year. Besides that, besides the Florida State game, our closest opponent was Virginia Tech, because we were in the Big East. So we were going to Boston, Philadelphia, Boston to play Boston College, Rutgers. I can't remember the city that Rutgers is in, but we would get back at like 2:30 or 3:00 in the morning, sometimes 4:00. And so then our guys had to be back in the weight room the next day and early the next day. So it was our training sessions were terrible. And that's the only time I've done it. So yeah, I was big time anti.
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm
training.
Yeah. So my biggest switch that I made programming wise is I convinced our head coach to lift Sunday, which was our big, heavy, more of our volume focused day in season, and Wednesday, the day before a game. And you've been around a lot of head coaches, and big time head coaches. And I was nervous bringing that up, but I'm just sitting there on Friday, the day after a game. Number one, these kids, that's the last thing they want to do, and they want to go home, and they want to do anything but football. And I'm like, Coach, I really think that this is going to benefit every single person involved if we can do a Sunday and Wednesday lift. Sunday prior to team meetings and Wednesday right before our walkthrough. And he's like, sure, I'm not a strength coach. Let's do it. Better than me. And so that would be the day. So that would be my dynamic effort day. And the only stipulation is he's like, well, how much time do you need? I was like, well, how much time are you going to give me? He said, well, we're going to have to chunk the groups. So we have 4 groups. Let's give you 25 minutes. I was like, perfect. I'll have them done in 24. So my Wednesday session was about 23 to 24 minutes. I'd do my vertical jump test. I do 2 Olympic movements, some dynamic effort, upper body plyos, and get them out. And the vertical jump numbers, I mean, I'm telling you, these guys are already in game mode the day before a game. Their nervous system is ramped up. And so the vertical jump numbers climbed all the way through. 65% of our team had their best vertical jumps in the last half of the season. 20% of that 60% had in the last 4 weeks of the season. I mean, and they had Friday off, they had Saturday off, they had half a Sunday off. So then they're ready. The bumps and bruises are pretty much gone. We'll work that out through the lift. And our big lifting day was Sunday. And it was the best change that we've ever made. I mean, it was awesome. And they're feeling fresh. You hope to see some potentiation go through on Thursday.
Absolutely.
But they're just ready to roll. And that was one of the best switches, the best changes of programming that I ever made. And if anyone's listening, I would be like, have that conversation, because day after the game, for us, every single person plays. And so it's not like, your Division I place where you have your 40 guys or 30 guys that play all 90% of the reps, and then everyone else is sitting around. So everyone's in the same boat for the most part when it comes to, getting their snaps in on game day.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story now that we're on this topic. So at I didn't like it. Our guys were crippled. We'd been on a plane. Some of those plane flights, you're coming back from Boston or I can't even remember the city that we flew out. Well, we probably flew out of New Jersey, coming back from Rutgers, but I forgot the city that the school was in, or Philadelphia. Anyway, those were some tough flights. And come from, we played Virginia Tech on a Thursday night, And we had to bus after the game. It was a night game. It was on ESPN. We had to bus to Roanoke, Virginia, which is over an hour after the game, and then get on a plane and fly. And same thing at West Virginia. Tough place. I've played there twice, once at Miami and then once here at LSU. Tough place to get out of. So when we got back to, Miami, the guys had a few hours in bed and they had to get up and come to the facility and work out. And the workouts were terrible. They were just terrible. So when I got here, Coach Saban had a medicinal stretch and stride on Sunday and a voluntary lift. Well, of course, the guys wanted to lift. So what we did, the varsity, we would have a voluntary lift, and then everybody that was on the travel squad, we would do a stretch and stride. And that wasn't hard. We'd do a long stretch, do a little striding up and down the football field or in the indoor. And then if you didn't lift before the stretch and stride, you could lift after the stretch and stride. So this thing grew and grew and grew and grew. And then it got to the point where we would train 50 or 60 guys on a Sunday, but it was only the guys that wanted to train. We had a roster, then of 120 guys. So probably 3/4 of the team would lift that day. So then years later, I talked to a strength coach, and we were just talking about a saliva study that they had done throughout the fall with their football team. And so before they left on Friday, they would do a saliva test. They would test free testosterone, creatine kinase, and cortisol levels. And then immediately after the game, they would spit in a little thing, and they tested the same thing: free testosterone, creatine kinase, and cortisol levels. And then they would come back after 24 hours. They would do it again, and then they did it, 36 to 72 hours later. So what they found is following a football game, and it was worse if it was an away game, free testosterone was lowered, creatine kinase was up, cortisol levels were up. And it was about a 2-day period before those numbers returned to baseline that they had done the day before they left, the last practice day on Friday before they left or whatever. It was all done before the walkthrough on Friday. And so I listened to all that, and I thought, this workout thing that we're doing on Sunday can't be good, especially traveling in the SEC too, because the SEC isn't a easy place to travel, sometimes, especially after night games. So that fall, when we got ready with the team to talk about in-season training, I told the team, I said, look, this year we're going to do something different, and we're not going to lift on Sunday after the game. We're going to get together, we're going to stretch, we'll limber up, and we'll do some yoga, stuff like that. But the running and the lifting, we're not going to do. And the team was like, oh, Coach, what are you doing, man? I love getting that workout out of the way on Sunday, and then Monday, all I got to focus on is academics and our short practice and film. And I said, that's fine. I said, look, we'll do it this way. We'll do it for 2 weeks where you have Sunday off. And then, and after 2 weeks, if you still want to work out on Sunday, we'll start it over again. At the end of that 2-week period, I couldn't have paid those guys to come work out. They were like, Coach, man, all I did all day was eat and sleep, drink water, and watch football. Coach, why did we do that for so long? But it was something that, the coaching staff wanted us to do. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of giving guys time to rest and recover and especially if you lose, man. Guys, they don't want to be over there. It's the last place they want to be. Now, training room and treatment and rehab, all of that stuff, that's mandatory, and I believe in that. and stretching. I believe in that. Get a light stretch, limber up, ride the stationary bike, get on the vibe plates, foam stick, and all foam roll and stick and all that. But not a big day after the game lift guy.
Yeah.
No.
And it's like, and to me, from, where I'm at, it's like the guys that we're counting on the most, we're always the most sore after a game. Yeah. Our running backs, our defensive linemen. And so I'm sitting there like, okay, this guy just got hit by a bus, or these guys got hit by a bus, and I'm in such a time crunch. Well, I have to develop these guys. This is a wasted day because they're going through the motions and and it's, so I was like, I need to put everybody in the best possible situation so we can make significant body composition changes through the fall to set us up for the spring, to set you up for the next fall. And honestly, just switching those days was a massive change. And so, because you're essentially, you're not always lifting fresh, but you're always lifting as fresh as you can possibly be.
Yeah. And, there's still a lot of people that lift the day after the game. And I think most NFL teams do it. And I don't, I never really paid a lot of attention what other people do, with their teams. I would talk to a lot of people about, general training and stuff like that. But I never, if it was something that I wasn't interested in or wasn't told to do, I never really paid that much attention to what people do on Sunday. But I know for a fact that it helped us not to do it. So,
I mean, just for my own self, training the day after a game, I mean, you know what we do. Guys, get back. We're hype guys, and we keep things organized. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And now, I didn't play a snap.
Do y'all travel a lot out of state?
Never. Yeah. Unless we're going to the national. So they just implemented a playoff system for junior college last year. So unless you're going to the national playoff, the Final Four, you're staying in state. So our longest trip is about 5.5. We're getting up close to Memphis, depending on the year. But otherwise, I mean, it's just in state every week.
And all buses too. So there's no flying.
No,
there's no. Yeah, we would fly to some of our opponents, are pretty close. Our baseball teams and some of the other teams would take a bus, but we would always fly. So it was always kind of, funny. We would fly that you would bring to some of these games. Yeah. Now, when I was at Tennessee, we bused to Kentucky, and I think we even bused to Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So I know we bused. I remember busing to go to Lexington to play Kentucky because it's just right up I-75. But if I'm not mistaken, I think we took buses to Vanderbilt also from Knoxville. But that's a pretty good trip. From Knoxville to Nashville is probably 3.5 hours. So that's a pretty good trip, maybe even longer. So let me ask you this. How do the athletes at Jones, because you've coached at some 4-year institutions, how do the athletes at Jones compare to some of the 4-year schools that you've coached at?
So in terms of what they look like when they walk through the door, they're like I said before, they're just malnourished. They're skinny, but the skeletons are there. So they're tall, they're long, they're big, but they're just weak. Super underdeveloped in every sense of the word. So for example, when I was at Memphis, we had a lot of, and this is track and field athletes, but I would recruit a lot of international kids, and those kids were so refined from a skill perspective. There was essentially nothing that they hadn't seen. There's a lot of nuances in Western training for speed training, for weight room especially. You get a European in the weight room, you're going to see some crazy stuff. But they were unfamiliar. The kids that I have now are just so unfamiliar with, really just basic movements. So from a skeletal standpoint, from the eyeball test, they're big, but they're just insanely underdeveloped. But their skill set, they're really, really good at what they do.
Yeah.
And so that's something that you don't necessarily see when they walk into the weight room. Be like, okay, this basketball player is 6'7" and he weighs 135 pounds, whatever.
Yeah.
But he can put the ball in the hole,
Yeah.
But at the same time, this guy is in great danger of slipping down the shower drain. He's so skinny. And so it's like, what? Like what?
Man,
so they have high potential to succeed in the weight room, whereas the 4-year athletes, they're already more developed, more refined, and so the approach is completely. I can get into the nuanced things, more event specific training for a long period of time, but at the junior college level, it's ground zero. If we can get past ground zero, we're in great shape.
Yeah. So you're spending more time with general physical preparation than
that's pretty much the essence of what I do, because they have to be, it should go without saying, but they have to be proficient in all the main movements, because part of my goal for these athletes is to be, batteries included, out of the box, ready to go when they go to their 4-year school. So if they understand how to train, they understand how to be proficient in the movements that they do, then whatever the 4-year coach wants them to do, they'll be able to do it. The verbiage might be different, whatever, but they're going to understand exactly how to perform the movement. And so far, it's been a very, very high success rate, and but the general prep portion, it's borderline. I don't want to say bodybuilding, but it's borderline bodybuilding when it comes to developing the rest of their body, because they're number one.
Well, you have to put on muscle mass.
Yeah, you do. You can be the most skilled guy ever, but if you're a corner and you're 165 pounds, it's like, hey, I'm gonna roll the dice on the kid that weighs 195, even though he might not be as good. Again, the eyeball test is going to be like, okay, we don't have as much work to do. But it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for athletes to come, football players specifically, to come in July 10th, and by August 1st they've gained 20 pounds.
Oh, I know.
Isn't that amazing? It's not, and that's practicing at 2:30 in the afternoon when it's 5,000 degrees outside.
But they're getting 3 hots in a cot and they're training. I've seen it. I've seen guys put on 20 pounds like that. What's amazing is that you'll have guys that are doing everything they can possibly do to gain weight, and they're eating, they're going to bed at night, and then they'll have a teammate that came here at the same body weight, and that cat can't gain a pound. And, I know genetics play a huge role in that, but sometimes there are certain players that are more committed than others. And a question, and I want to get to this next question, but I keep thinking about the portal. All right. So I have 2 questions. All right. And I'm regressing a little bit here. Okay. So one, do y'all have any players that redshirt and play 3 years? Because technically they could be there for 3 years. They could redshirt as freshmen and play 2, or they could play as a freshman, get injured and redshirt, and then play their 3rd year would be their 2nd year of eligibility. Do y'all have any of that? And then what about portal guys? I'm sure that you're probably recruiting portal guys, or maybe not, and how What's the number high school to portal that you think y'all recruit?
So
that's two questions.
The portal question.
Yeah.
The redshirt question. It's very few and far between. Do we have them? Okay. Absolutely. And it's primarily due to an injury. But because when our coaches recruit, they recruit Division I kids to begin with. Yeah. And so we have high level kids that are already here. So they're already on people's radar for the most part. Yeah. But we may have maybe no more than 2 or 3 in a given year. So which is fine. But for the most part, our guys, like I said, they're out in 3 semesters. And the portal this year has probably showed its head the most, where we've had a few kids from 2 from Power 5 programs and another one from a group of 5 that have come in the spring. But the thing with the portal is we're able to get our hands on better high school kids because coaches are recruiting the portal. So so these 4-year coaches that come in, they're recruiting high school kids for when they enter the portal. So they already have a relationship. But the portal kids, they've already gotten their transfer out of the way. Yeah. And so unless these kids want to sit out or it's a last ditch effort, but we have our calendar where we can't add anybody anymore. Yeah. And so like we just got a kid the other day from a Big Ten school, and it's like a last ditch effort, but we're able to get our hands on better high school kids because unless they're 4 or 5 star, they're like, well, let me just go get this kid that's already been developed at a 4-year school who's 19 years old, and we'll bring them in.
Right. Yeah. So the portal guys have kind of been picked through by the time. And that ought to tell you something too. If you're a portal kid, if you entered the portal, let's say you're not playing where you're at, you enter the portal and you're not even being picked up by a junior college, reality has to set in at some point, and they say, maybe I'm not as good as what I thought I was going to be.
Well, exactly. That's exactly right. And also we might have a high school kid that's better. And so
exactly.
We're out recruiting the portal by getting high school kids from Mississippi.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, good. So we were talking, I had to get that out because I kept thinking about that and I wanted to ask that question. So now we were on the topic of gaining weight and being committed to the program and stuff like that. So here's my next question. So goal setting isn't something that we've talked a lot about in the podcast that we've done. And because a lot of it is leaned toward, developing speed and technology and all this other stuff, but goal setting is something that I think is very important. So I wanted to ask you about that. What type of goal setting do you do with the players and the athletes there? And how do you think it helps in their development in their time at Jones?
So the easy part for me is I already know from a football standpoint what every single person's number one goal is. Yeah. And that is to go play at a 4-year school. And so day one, I tell these kids, I'm like, look, I know what your goal is. Your goal is to get out of here. I want you to get out of here as soon as possible. I love you, but I would love to see you go. And it goes hand in hand with them being underdeveloped. So these kids, they're wired so different. They're hungry. They want to get out. They want to break the generational poverty that most of these kids are in. And so they want to go get a degree from Jones. They want to get a 4-year degree. Okay. So they're very intrinsically motivated, but the extrinsic portion of that is where it really fuels the fire, because they want to gain weight. They understand they need to get bigger, they need to get stronger, and they need to get faster. And so I'm not a huge, because I mean, you've heard this a million times. Oh, well, coach said I need to be 205 and I weigh 199. Okay. Being 205 would be awesome, but how do you play at 190? Are you going to be, is Oklahoma going to call you at 205 where they're not going to call you at 199? You know, so I don't get very hung up on the intricacies of body weight. When these coaches come in and I'm talking about an athlete, he may be a 170-pound corner, but I was like, look, coach, this kid came in at 157. So think about the progress he's made here, and now think about what he can do at a 4-year school with training tables, with all the technology, with the sport dietitians, all these things. And so the athletes, and I'm sure it's not me, but the buy-in is so great that they can see the forest through the trees, where the end goal, just be patient, it's going to come. Just keep doing these things that we keep preaching. Go to bed. Do not miss meals. Okay? Just body is priority 1A, and everything that you want is gonna be there at the end. I promise you. Okay? And so the extrinsic motivation for these guys to run a certain time, to jump a certain height, to do this is the carrot that's dangling in front of them. And it's just the day by day process to get to that point. And so the patience portion for these guys is a hard sell at first, but once they start seeing through October, be like, oh my gosh, I'm repping what I would max in high school, you know, and it's like, hey, okay, I'm in, coach, like, let's go. So I don't need these, because here's what would happen if I said, all right, write down your goals. I want to go play in the NFL. I want to go to a 4-year school. I want to catch 20 touchdowns in a year. I'm like, okay, like, let's be let's be here. Let's be here. Let's be realistic. When I was in college, like, we had a good team, a good football team, and our coach was like, our number one goal is to win the national championship. Oh, yes, duh. But how about we win 9 games first? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, let's set real world goals. And if we win 9 games, we'll shoot. Let's reset those goals. Let's go win the first 2 playoff games. Let's go here. Like, I understand the pie in the sky, but how do you bake that pie to put it up there in the first place? Right. So it may be a more obscure approach or an abstract approach, but this is what I'm dealing with right now, right here. And we kind of got to take baby steps, and we got to see the end result and how it's obtained, and then work towards that.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some nuts and bolts. I want to talk some good old fashioned strength training. What's your philosophy on developing strength, and how do you go about doing it with the Bobcats?
So, oh man, this is the best part. So when the kids that I have that come in, okay, their training age at best is maybe a 1. And if I'm lucky, I got a kid that's got 2 good years under his belt. And honestly, the kids that I've gotten from 4-year schools are some of the worst lifters, because they've never been corrected of their bad habits, and they're just gun shy. They have these 18-year-old freshmen that are making them look silly. So when I started out, in my whole first 4 weeks is dynamic effort lifts, everything, because number one, I have to I have to reinforce or I have to enforce motor patterns that they've never done. So how do I do that? Well, I do it by moving light things fast. So that's every single time we train until we start progressing through the season. I need my goal for these guys is to be their strongest, to be their most powerful, to be their most explosive at the end of the season. So I migrate towards cluster sets, and I use the RPE scale. And so I've kind of done a conjugaphasic method that I've kind of taken from everywhere because it works. And I'm not trying to be ugly, but it works so well because the kids that I deal with, they don't know how much weight is on the bar.
Yeah.
Because they just can't add, and it's not their fault. Okay. It's not their fault. They just don't know what's on the bar. And so I use the RPE scale with emojis. Okay. This is what a 3 looks like. This is a 4. This is a 5. This is a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, kind of like the pain scale at the doctor's office.
Yeah.
And I just gradually progress until I get to the red, angry emoji, close to it at least, towards the end of the season. And so my cluster sets, I love the clusters with these guys. Okay, for me, it shows a reduced RPE, even though they're moving heavier weights as time goes on. I'll start out with like 3 sets of 3 plus 3 plus 3 clusters, and eventually it'll go down to two sets of maybe 1 plus 1. And so we have a record board at school, which I couldn't care less about it, but all our records are broken in season. All our lifting records are broken in season, and they're all broken in the last 4 weeks of the season. And it's just through training. They might rep a record 3 times. And so I want to lift 80 to 90 to higher percent, basically the last half of the season. And so it's easy because the volume is reduced. At that point, they've had 13, 14 weeks of learning how to train. And so I can go in there, bang 3 heavy doubles or 2 heavy doubles in a movement, and do some pull-ups, do some back extensions or glute ham raises, and get them out of there. And so I am a very firm believer in lifting heavy in season. I just think there's too many benefits. Time, number 1. 2, they need it. They need to feel that they've had ample time to develop movement patterns and feel comfortable, and then also know what it's like to feel uncomfortable as well. But I want them to feel heavy weight and to grind something out. And I've never had any injuries from that. In fact, honestly, I feel like the guys feel so much better after they do that because the volume is decreased. I mean, it's an ego thing. Man, I'm lifting this, I'm lifting that, I'm doing this. Awesome. That's what we want.
Yeah. And just like you, our end season from the time our first training camp workout until our last workout was usually 20 to 21 weeks. That's the longest uninterrupted time that I ever had as a collegiate strength coach was during the season. So you get more opportunities to train in season because they're going to be there. They're not going anywhere, and there's no breaks in the calendar except for an open date where you can't train. And so, I believe that anybody that knows me and has ever worked for me knows that we always trained heavy in season, and just like you said, you got to cut the volume out, but you have to. Now, as far as lifts, your primary lower body movement is either a squat and or deadlift. How do you handle those in season?
So, and yeah, so my heavier movements, and I will put in an Olympic movement or an Olympic derivative in there.
Yeah.
All my deadlifts are sumo deadlifts.
Yeah.
We get so many conventional or narrow stance movements with RDLs, what have you. I'll make an RDL. I'll do a block of where my RDL is actually my main lower body movement. Because I think there's few exercises better than a heavy ass RDL.
Yeah.
So
no pun intended.
Right. So with the conjuphasic idea, and with lack of equipment, so I'm gearing my conjugate portion of altering that movement. So it may be a wide stance, it may be a low bar, it may be a high bar, it may be a front squat. I'm going to put a tempo on it. I'm going to put a pause on it, because these guys, they want to lift every weight on earth. So my job is to put as many governors in place as possible, so you can still get a max effort on the lift, but there's going to be 4 governors that's going to take weight off. So I'm going to put a 5-second eccentric. I'm going to put a 2-second pause, and it's going to be a wide stance squat. Okay, so I've put 3 huge parameters that's going to take an insane amount of weight off the guy's back, but they're still going to be doing a max effort movement with that. And so when the season is coming to a close, then we're doing the actual movements. And so it may have been 5, 6, 7 weeks before they've done a conventional anything type movement.
Yeah.
And then that's when the weight just flies, right? And that's when you're able to load it up. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. It feels so fast. Well, yeah, your time under tension is 5 seconds compared to 16 seconds.
Yeah.
So, and the sumo deadlift, for a main lift, track people, I think, are innate to having a very, very detailed coach's eye. And so I know there's so many places still that just don't believe that the deadlift is a safe movement. And I just call BS on that. In fact, I interviewed for a job a couple of years ago, a Division I job, and the sport coach was like, hey, tell me your movements that you really love. And I actually said I love to sumo deadlift first. And the coach was like, well, I've had players injured doing that movement, and I don't allow deadlifts anymore. And I said, well, you probably had a really bad strength coach.
Yeah.
But I mean, so the dynamic effort portion, the dynamic effort portion is great early on to just teach the form. And it's a safer movement than a conventional deadlift in terms of low back, because again, these kids are so weak, but that movement is so great for the posterior chain. And so with all kinds of reps, with pauses, with being at a deficit, what have you, I can force these guys in the proper position and just teach them the proper mechanics of it. I said, look, when we're doing a dynamic effort lower body lift, your setup for the movement should take longer than the lift itself, than the set itself.
Yeah.
And so, because I know for me,
I like that.
The setup in that, if you're off, if I'm trying to pull close to 700 pounds, then I better freaking make sure that everything is locked in and feeling right.
Yeah.
And or if I'm doing a dynamic effort movement, I still got to make the same thing so I can pop that weight no matter what movement I'm doing. And so it's awesome to see guys just kind of wedge themselves in that movement, and they've done it so many times at this point. Towards the end of the season, when I'm like, look, I want a 9 RPE on this movement, the 30% looks the same as the 90%, and that's what I tell them. I said, I don't care if you're lifting an empty bar or you're lifting an entire house off the ground. The setup should look exactly the same.
Yeah, I like that. What about upper body?
So upper body is a huge challenge because we only have 4 benches, number one.
Mm-hmm.
We only have 4 places to bench, and we don't have a lot of dumbbell opportunities. It's hard to program almost a full set of dumbbells for 35 guys in a room with 4 benches.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of overhead movements. We'll do padded bench press or a block press with we don't have blocks, but I found a set of old yard markers, those big, the ones you see like in junior high football. So I got some of those. Yeah. I carved out some little notches in the corner of our platforms, so we have like a built-in landmine. So we do a lot of unilateral work, upper body, floor press. I can floor press everybody at the same time. But again, I don't really care about their bench press, to be honest with you. It's just it's not high up on my priority list. I want them to be strong unilaterally, and I want them to be strong overhead, and the bench can fill in the gaps. So I use it kind of as a gap filler. And I do a lot of tricep work. And it's funny because we won't touch a regular bench press for 10 weeks. We'll focus on floor pressing, narrow grip work, unilateral work, and triceps. And their bench will be up 15%. It's like, and with all the back work too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's going to be, it's like, hey, you want to get really good at bench? We'll stop benching so much and see what happens.
Yeah, your shoulders hurt. Stop benching.
Exactly.
So, one of the most glaringly obvious things that I've taken from the podcast so far is you don't have to have all of the fancy gear, the fancy weight room, and all the bells and whistles to develop an effective strength and conditioning program. And you're not making excuses for not having gear. You're finding a way to get it done and working hard at it. And that's huge. That is huge. Huge.
It's, it'd be one thing if we had the technology. I don't think it would mean much to the athletes that I'm working with. It would give me a more detailed portrait of what is being painted. But the lack of everything is a blessing and a curse. And it's a blessing because I have to focus on the nuts and bolts of things. I have to get the X factor of training, of how to train. Look, once I get all these guys to be able to just bust their tail day in, day out on the things that I need them to bust their tail in, when they go to their next stop, all that stuff will show up for them.
Yeah.
But exactly. But I know what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the progress week in, week out. And they're not, and quite frankly, they're not ready for the tech.
Right.
Like I could, I would love to have perch on all of our racks, but it's like, dude, you can't move properly in the first place. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay, you're moving fast, but you're not even moving correctly. So what does it matter? So,
you've probably gotten guys, some of your big guys probably sometimes can't do more than 20 push-ups, I bet.
Or geez. Yeah.
I bet you come across guys that can't do push-ups and pull-ups.
Yeah. So this year I made it, I made it a very high priority to implement a variation of a vertical pull. We have 4 pull-up bars.
Yeah.
And I made it a priority to do that. And from July, there were skilled guys because I would put a max effort on pull-ups, and I'm very, very strict on how I coach pull-ups. That's one of the most bastardized movements in all of weightlifting, I think.
Yeah.
In all of strength training. 1 out of 1,000 people, I feel like, can execute a pull-up correctly. And so I'll have skill guys that are doing like 6 pull-ups, like the way that they should be done, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But by the end of by April of the spring semester, we're doing sets of 10 to 12 with perfect execution. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it's just, those are the things that I see where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, my left tackle, he can't even, he's like a free fall on the second push-up. It's like, okay, so that's kind of where I'm starting from. Yeah. You know, their bodies all over the place, their shoulders are, you know, it's just like, oh my goodness, okay, here we go. So it's really just just being very attentive to the technique of the movements. The weight will take care of itself every single time. Yeah. And they're so untrained, I'm lucky where I don't have many bad habits to break because they don't know how to do it in the first place. So I teach them what I think is the correct way to do it, and that's all they know until they're out of here.
All right. So, and I think you'll agree with this, but it goes without saying that speed is a limiting factor in almost all sports, especially, you know, track and field and football. You got to be fast. Then it doesn't matter what position you play. Having experience as a collegiate track and field coach, tell us what you do to get the team faster.
So this
sprint.
Yeah. Anyway. So this is really where I feel like I'm not trying to blow my own horn here, but I'm good at. I'm good at making people fast. I mean, that's where I started. That's what I do. It's in the track world. You can't. Okay. You know, who's a better football running back, Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders? I mean, you could make an argument for either one. Okay. Well, who's faster in track? Well, it's look at the times. It ain't hard. Yeah. So what I do in the spring for speed development, the biggest thing that I do is I teach them how to sprint. So these guys already have the hardware. They're already elite athletes in their respective sport, but they have no idea how to run. In fact, I would argue that most people have no clue how to run. And it really hit me in the face when I was at Southern Miss, and one of my mentors here, he coached world record holders in track, and now his resume is a phone book, coach. He's incredible, Hall of Fame coach, and now he's coaching 7th grade girls cross country. I'm like, coach, how do you go from coaching Calvin Smith, at the time the fastest human to ever exist, to coaching 7th grade girls cross country? And he said, they need the exact same thing. It's just one does it a lot faster than the other. And I was just like mind blown. And ever since that day, I was like, you know what? It's okay to just hammer basics. Teach these kids how to move. And so I coach my hardest when I'm doing my warm up. So my warm up in the spring is about 22 minutes long. And now, man, it gets whittled down as they get better conditioned. That's usually the hardest part of our workout.
That's the workout many times. Yeah.
But I was like, look, guys, you're going to complain about this, but you know, I'll have a 30-minute warm up with a 120-pound female triple jumper, and they just breeze right through it. I understand it's apples and oranges, but just be patient, it'll come. And so I teach these guys how to mimic their acceleration patterns through warm-up, how to mimic max velocity mechanics through the warm-up, and then into our training session. And so the first 6-7 weeks, the workout is actually just an extension of our warm up. They really have no idea, what we're doing, which is fine. I don't care to have them really know. But then we start implementing moving fast from the first week. And so I was like, look, if you want to get good at free throws, I'm not going to sit here and shoot 3-pointers from the corner to get my free throw percentage up. If you want to move fast, you have to train fast. You have to sprint. And so kind of the same principle that I take from the lifting portion, where I put as many governors in place as possible, I'll do the same thing sprinting. So we'll do nonlinear sprints. We'll do uphill sprints. We'll do things that aren't just straight down linear sprinting. But at the same time, we're still working on the mechanics. We work acceleration 3 times a week because, again, my goal isn't to have these guys in football shape. I couldn't care less about football shape. My goal is to get these guys fast as humanly possible in 13, 14 weeks. So we work acceleration mechanics and acceleration 3 times a week. Why do I do that? Well, in a 40, your acceleration portion is about 65, 70% of your race. And so, and I show these guys, I'm like, look, when we do our wicket runs or our cone runs, I emphasize the importance of, look, here's what this distance looks like. They're the same amount of cones, but here's a shoe. All the tech I have, I use my shoe. So this is 6.5 Queck shoes. This is 7.5 Queck shoes. So I have no idea exactly the distance on it. But I was like, look, you're traveling 5 yards farther here than you are here taking the same amount of steps. I was like, your max velocity is going to last about maybe 3 strides, and then you start to decelerate. So where in this race are we going to start to hit that peak velo and then start to tail off? And so we run fast all the time. So like 2 days a week, every single week. And then work acceleration. We have plyometric days, and I guess I don't really do traditional plyometrics. We don't have boxes. So I use bleachers, but for me and my philosophy, you don't need anything over 2 feet. I think, if you're learning how to do a plyometric correctly, I don't get impressed seeing some guy jump on a 60-inch box when their heels are over their ears. I was like, well, I want to see how high you are off the ground. Where's your greater trochanter in that same movement doing something else? And so, I take a very track-like approach. I really focus on ankle stiffness. Like we work ankle stuff every single day. I think that's a huge neglect across so many strength and conditioning programs, is neglecting the ankles. It's like the coach that I worked with at Southern Miss, he was a jumps coach, the best jumps coach that I've ever been around. His mother was the Romanian national jumps coach for like 20 years. And a lot of the exercises and the things that they would do, I've stolen from them. And I mean, they're insane. I mean, to the point where like, this is what we're going to do. These kids just sit there and laugh. I'm like, no, just go with it.
So when you talk about ankle stiffness, explain that for the listeners so that they're not confused by something else.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is I want to develop that Achilles tendon to get it thick and fire it. And being from the track and field world, every single weekend I was fortunate enough to be able to stare at Carl Lewis's Achilles tendon. Yeah. Because he and I would be coaching jumps, and if like I would look down and I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a 2x4 on the back of each leg. And I mean, like Carl Lewis is Carl Lewis. If you don't know Carl Lewis, look him up. I mean, the guy was an absolute freak. But my goal is to get that ankle joint to propel the rest of that body and to be able to withstand so many forces. So of any sport, of any sport, of any movement, a triple jumper is going to absorb the most amount of force of any sport. Every single phase that they're putting down 1,700 elite triple jumpers are putting 17 to 1,900 PSI on that ankle joint. So I teach a lot of high jump plyometrics, long jump, triple jump, bounding. Bounding is so hard to teach because so many people are visual learners. And if you can't do it, how are you going to explain one of the most advanced plyometrics there are? So we just take baby steps going through that. But I want my guys to be able to absorb the force and replace that force with propulsion. And so it's a constant work. But when we do our broad jumps or our frog jumps, repetitive or our bound for distance, I have these guys individually keep track of how many bounds they're doing within a certain distance. And by the end of the semester or the end of our training block, it's like I'm taking 2 less strides, meaning they're going farther. Yeah. They're getting in and out of their foot contact faster, and they're able to produce more force within that. Right. You don't need tech to do that. Okay. If I'm doing 7 jumps now and I'm doing 7 jumps then and 5 jumps now, I'm doing something right.
Exactly. Yeah. We used to record that when I was at the University of Tennessee. We did bounding with the skill position players and some of the smaller mid-skill guys. And we recorded the number of jumps or bounds that they did for a particular distance. And so, yeah, I'm familiar with that for sure. So with this much sprinting, you obviously don't have a lot of hamstring injuries, do you? So,
well, right. I mean, do they happen? Absolutely. Again, I'm dealing with a junior college athlete that a lot of times their priorities get mismatched. They may be on no sleep. Who knows there could be a million extraneous factors involved in any sort of soft tissue injury. We've had one soft tissue injury since I've been here during the season. Have we had some in the spring? Yes, absolutely. I'm kind of a hardo when it comes to when it's cold, we run. Like these guys, I'm from Minnesota, so cold to me is much different than a cold to somebody else. I ran in 2 meets over 70 degrees in 5 years when I was running.
Oh, and wow. Only 2 meets.
2 meets. Yep. And then when I competed post-collegiately when I was at Southern Miss, I was like, what have I been doing? Like, I'm so much faster now because I'm running in 90 degrees. But typically they happen in cold weather at submax movements. Rarely do they happen when we're actually doing max velocity. But again, when it happens and when the hamstrings happen, it's when that learning curve kind of comes to a crosshair where we start to kind of take the reins off these guys and let them go linearly without any parameters or governors in place. And the learning curve of how to sprint happens. And so they may be trying to overreach. They may be trying to do something that is not what I teach them. And I'm not trying to take blame off myself, but this is across the board when it happens. And that's usually when it happens. And I think that's common for pretty much anyone that's ever pulled a hamstring. It could be weather related. It could be I'm overstriding. It could be a million things. It could be too much for that person, too little sleep, too little hydration. Who knows?
Academic.
But for the exactly. All these outside stresses. But I think for what we do and what I do and how I approach it, the amount of hamstring injuries that occur are minimal, especially when they're coming from nothing to improving the way that they have.
Yeah. All right. Here's a question that goes along with the running. Are there rules in the Mississippi Junior College League that that limit the amount or doesn't limit the amount of work that coaches can do with the players during the off season? In other words, do your football coaches get to practice with the players now like they are in the NC2A?
So I think we're allowed 12 practices in the spring.
And that's it. Yeah.
That's it. So the hardest pill for me to swallow is the amount of time that these guys have off. And so I'll go back to the last day of our season. A lot of times, well, every time, it's about they have 10 to 11 weeks off, where it's a hope. So let's say, for example, we lose in the state championship game for junior college in Mississippi. So at that point, guys are getting academics squared away. Half the team is leaving, and everyone's trying to continue their eligibility. And the semester is over in 3 weeks. Not much you can do in 3 weeks. So the weight room gets put on the back burner to get them able to do this in the spring. So I go from middle of November to the beginning of February where I don't see them. Wow. So I've taken 2 steps forward, and I'm taking maybe 2 steps back. My goal is for them to be as close to where we ended as possible. And if they're the exact same, it's a huge win. So
and you write programming, do you give them packets to take with them?
Yeah. And I spend 10, 11 weeks nightly praying that the guys had done something. And so, but it gets even worse is in the spring when they're done in May, and then I don't see the guys from the first week of May until the second week of July. So we don't bring our guys back in the summer or in the winter. And so you know how it is in the summer. Guys, they're outside, they're doing stuff. Training is a lot of times on the back burners. They lose a lot of weight. The sun suppresses appetite, and these guys are already at a deficit, and they go from guaranteed 3 meals to maybe eating a meal in a day, an actual meal. And so that's a huge, huge struggle. And I would love to have those rules changed, but we can't pay for summer school. Junior colleges can't pay for summer school. So there's no way to get these guys back.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. The rules are bonkers.
Yeah.
And frankly, we don't have the money for housing, for meals, for what have you, just for them to come in and train. That would be our entire budget for the most part.
Yeah. Wow. So that during the spring, except for those 12 practice days, there's no organized activity with the coaches.
So they'll go and do some light 7-on.
Yeah.
But every year is different. There are years where we don't have an offensive line. There are years where we might not have a quarterback in the spring. There are years where we don't have but two receivers. And so it looks different every single spring. And so try to get 12 practices when you don't have an offensive line. Your long snapper is snapping or who knows. Yeah, exactly. So it's every spring looks different, and you just have no idea what that shell is going to look like.
That's amazing. So we're getting toward the end. I got a couple more questions, and I want to ask you, you've put up some good numbers in the gym yourself. What are some things that you have found from training yourself that may or may not carry over to the sports that you work with?
I think the ability to, I train by myself. I haven't had a training partner in 15 years. And so to be self-motivated, I mean, I call it the Jesus spot. I mean, Jesus is the only one spotting me, you know? But the ability to work up to a heavy set and to tap into what I'm thinking and how I approach it, and the intrinsic motivation that I have for that is what I try to bring out in my athletes to number one, not be afraid. And thankfully that these junior college athletes, they, God missed the fear portion in their design. These kids aren't afraid of anything, which honestly is hard for me, because I'm like, whoa, no, you're not ready for that. You don't know how much that is. But it's to take that mindset of doing something extraordinary on a personal level and take that mindset and apply it to the sports setting. It's not, I'm not trying to make power lifters out of my athletes, but there's a lot you can take from the mindset of a power lifter and put it into an athlete. And so it's learning how something should feel after completion of it, or how something should feel going into the movement, and try to make it as seamless as possible. And so that's the biggest message. And, thankfully I'm getting older now, so things are kind of starting to catch up to me a little bit, but being able to still have skin in the game, I think is super important. I mean, this is a hobby, Coach. I mean, this is the best job on earth. And I get to, I'm clocking in when I'm training, because I'm taking things that I experiment on myself and be like, ooh, that would be really good. That'd be a really good rotational movement for my softball players, or something like that. And use myself as a lab rat and apply it appropriately in their training program. But it's just weight room is a mental game, man. It's just, if you're not there mentally, you might be better off. You might be better off just
not even being
hanging it up one day and not even being there. Let's come back. Let's come hungry the next time.
That's what I would tell guys. Look, man, if you're not dialed in and you don't want to be here, then come back when you feel better, when you mind it, because there's a lot that goes on with college age kids, a lot that as coaches, you don't even know what some of these kids, unless they open up to you, you don't know what they're going through. And I would much rather them go work on that and get that off of their mind, and then come back when they're dialed in and ready to train. Now, you hear
so much.
Oh. Yeah. No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, you hear so much. It's like, hey, leave your problems outside the door and and come in and dial in. I mean, it's a great saying, but in the real world, I don't know if it makes all that much sense. I had our women's basketball team is arguably the best sport on campus, them and softball. And the entire starting five for the women's basketball team, three of them are Power 5 basketball players, and the other two are Group of 5 basketball players. And one of the girls came up, and I could just tell from the moment she walked in, this is the last place she wanted to be. And I said, look, my job is to make you a better basketball player as much as I can. Is going and taking a nap going to make you better today? Or is trying to gut through this workout, this training session, going to make you better? And the way that she's wired, she said, oh, the way, being here. I said, seriously, you look like you just stayed up for a week straight, and this is the last place you want to be. I said, here's what I'm telling you to do. I'm telling you to go right now, go to the dorm and take a nap. And she came back the next training session, and she said she had number one, she had probably the best training session of the year that next day, the next time we trained. And she thanked me for that. She said, I didn't know coaches did that. I was like, well, I mean, if I'm feeling like that, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So why
Well,
would I
and
make
that
you
builds
do it?
trust too. That lets them know that you really, really do care about them as a human being instead of a piece of meat,
Exactly.
basically. So do you train the other teams in a similar fashion?
Very
Because,
similar.
they're different sports. They're different sports. So, and you don't have a lot of gear there. So do you train those other sports in a similar fashion?
I do, and the reason why I do, there's going to be a few more nuances
Yeah.
with softball versus football, but you're also
Yeah.
dealing with males and females, and so,
Yeah.
but at its ground level, the training age still comes back every single time as
Mm-hmm.
the needs analysis for me is the number one point. Is they don't know how to lift. They don't know how to execute movements. They don't know how to squat. They don't know how to clean. They don't know how to hardly do anything. So the general prep phase for all the sports looks very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that's what they need. They're weak.
Yeah.
Their movement patterns don't exist, and it's a lot of teaching. It's a lot of submaximal work. It's a lot of hypertrophy for upper and lower body, and especially the posterior. And so it's like, oh, would I like to do 115 individualized programs? Yeah, but if I make a needs analysis for all the athletes that I work with, the first 10 things are all going to be the same across the board.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
I know it's not cool to say, be like, oh, this guy just does all this all the time. Well, okay. Well, I need to do what these athletes need, and that's to learn how to lift. And so as we get in season, things look a lot different in terms of rep scheme, volume, what the main movements look like, things like that. But it's, every sport comes with its own challenges. The softball team at Jones, they were just national runners up this past year. They're probably the craziest weight room group that I have. And my in season looks different for them than it does basketball, because you talk about minimal effective dosage. These girls, they're like, can we go heavy today? I'm like, not today, but it's coming, So once we get in season, things look a little bit different. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And that's why the school is so successful in athletics. They've got somebody there that understands the need for that population of student athletes. And then you've got rosters full of competitive people who are trying to get to the next level. Well, they're trying to win a championship for themselves and the school, validate the fact to themselves that they are good enough to play at the next level. And then they're trying to get to the next level. I understand it. My son played junior college baseball, so I understand. And then we played at Jones. He actually started in the region in the championship game, and we lost to Jones. And it's been a while. And I don't even know if you were there, but y'all had some guys that were knocking the fire out of the baseball. Y'all had some hitters, and y'all's baseball facility is nice, man.
Yeah, our grounds crew probably shouldn't be at Jones. Like our grounds crew is A1. People all the time think we play on artificial surface when other teams are watching our tape, or they're coming to camp. They're like, oh, we thought this was turf. No, it's natural grass.
Yeah.
Baseball, softball, and football,
and
soccer. Those fields are, it's immaculate. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. When you sit, now I've never been in the stadium, but when you sit in a baseball stadium, you can look over and see the football stadium. I like the way y'all's bleachers look too, with the different colors, the stripes going up the bleachers.
Yeah, they're a little
cool. Now, how many sports do you, Excuse me? What'd you say?
Oh, they're a little faded, but I said they're no.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
no. Well,
Faded,
it's they're a little faded, but
yeah. How many sports do y'all have?
Well, we just added 2. We added men's golf and women's volleyball start. So we have men's, women's soccer, men's, women's basketball, football, baseball, softball.
Oh, wow.
And so I think we have 9. I think we have 9 sports. Oh, 11 with tennis, men's and women's tennis.
Yeah. Dang. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Well, good. Well, last question. No, I have 2 questions. 2 questions. This next one is probably the most important question of them all. Who's got a better deadlift, you or your brother Tim?
I mean, you know the saying that there's always someone warming up with someone else's max. That's where it applies. Tim tries, but when he's petering out, that's when I'm just getting in the groove. So sorry, Tim, but he's got a long way to go.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Tim. Now you've probably got a couple pounds on him though, right?
Well, Tim, I don't know. Tim might weigh a little bit more than me. Everyone
really?
else thinks I weigh like 200 pounds. Yeah, I weigh 176 pounds. So, I'm 179 on a post cowboy steak, night. But I'm pretty inflated, and so I think Tim probably weighs pretty close to what I weigh. But yeah, I don't know. That's not a fair comparison because I don't know how. I didn't know I was a good deadlifter, and then some big guys were like, "Hey, you're pretty good," and that's why I just started working on it. But I had that moment too. I was finishing when I was in Memphis. Ray Williams worked out at the gym that I worked out at, and so I thought I was doing something special squatting one day. And I finished and I said, "Hey," he said, "Hey, are you done?" I said, "Yeah." I was like, "I'll clean the weight up." He's like, "Don't worry about it." I had like 465 on the bar. And he takes off his stuff. He leaves his pants and his pants on, his shoes are untied. And he kicks his legs around a little bit and just starts banging 465 out. And I just left. I had a lot of other stuff I wanted to do. He just left. I just left. I was like, okay, I'm out of here. Ray is actually a coach, a defensive line coach here in the junior college level at Itawamba. So I get to see Ray. Man, if you've ever bro hugged a Sequoia, that you know what it's like to bro hug that guy. He's an alien.
All right. Any advice for young coaches?
Yeah. This is the thing I think a lot of people get caught up on. And I put me at the leader of that group. When I was young, I was impressed by what logo was on your shirt. I thought that the bigger the school, the better the strength coach. I thought those were the smartest guys in the history of the world. But I think if you want to get good experience, I would go to a smaller school if you're going to be interning to get a lot of hands-on and learn that way. I mean, there's pros and cons to going to a big school to a small school, but don't get impressed with the logo that's on the chest, because as a young coach trying to get your foot in the door, that might not be the best avenue for you to go. If you're lucky and fortunate enough to do that, I mean, good for you. You're 10 steps ahead, especially if you can pull your weight as an intern. But don't be afraid to work your way up. You go look at the NFL strength coaches, if that's where you end up wanting to go, or even some of these Power 5 schools. These guys are from Division III schools. These guys are from schools that you probably never heard of. And it's like, it's not an accident that they're there. And they didn't, they weren't fortunate enough to learn under a Tommy Moffitt or something like that. Because we all know that your coaching tree is essentially the middle tree of the forest, today's day and age. But it's just don't get impressed by the logos on the shirt and don't be afraid to reach out. Man, don't be afraid. These coaches aren't deities, and that was something that I had to learn. Like 12 years ago, Coach, I would never in a million years think that I would have a relationship with you. I was like, oh, this guy probably has 4 handlers is 4 secretaries for me to go through to get to him. And it's like these coaches aren't afraid to share their knowledge. I mean, and if they are, if they are afraid to share it, then you probably want to stay away from them.
Yeah. Well, there's probably string coaches out there that have 4 handlers, but I never did. I I was a high school string coach that just was blessed with an opportunity to coach in college when there wasn't a lot of string coaches. But, to piggyback off of your last statement, some of my best coaches came from D2 and D3 schools. And I've said it 1,000 times. And I've had some really good coaches that were former, SEC and professional football players. I've had some good ones, really good ones. But the vast majority of my best coaches were coaches that came from small schools. I will just close it out on that. So unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you for joining us today. And I really do appreciate our listeners' time. The podcast is doing phenomenal. And it's because of our listeners and the guests that we've had on here that have made this so great. So, David, I appreciate you being on here. Tell your beautiful wife and the entire Queck family back home that I said hello. You can connect with Coach Queck on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, his handle is at David_Queck, and Instagram it's at DQueck, at DQueck. This brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please, if you haven't already done so, follow the podcast and share it with your friends. That's important. And again, the podcast is killing it, man. And I owe a great deal of gratitude again to our guest and all of our listeners. If any of you have questions about the Moffitt method, our training solutions for schools and teams at all levels, go to our website, themoffittmethod.fit, and check us out. You can email us with any questions that you have at info@themoffittmethod.fit. Again, that's info@themoffittmethod.fit. Have a great day. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.